Welcome to lesson 1-2. Today we're going to talk about percents. Percent means per 100 or parts per 100. So what that means is that if we say we have 40%, that is equivalent to saying we have 40 out of 100 of that. In order to make a fraction from a percent, you're going to just simply take the percent and write it over 100. For example, if I have 23%, I would rewrite that as 23 over 100. And then you would reduce that fraction if you could. In order to make a decimal from your percent, you're going to take the percent divided by 100, or some people have better luck with simply moving the decimal 2 places to the left. Both are accomplishing the same goal. It's just whichever works better, makes more sense to you. Like, for example, we said before 23% was 23 over 100. So I could do 23 divided by 100. I would get 0.23. Or for 23%, my decimal would be right here behind the 3. I can move it 2 places to the left, and I would still get 0.23. So again, that is whichever makes more sense to you. We can also solve percent problems by using the proportion. Percent over 100 equals part over whole. Another way that this is sometimes taught is that the part would be like the is and whole would be of. So we'll do a couple examples to show you that. In a survey, 125 out of 300 people state that they like pizza for breakfast. What percent is this? So you could use the percent proportion, or we could take a more traditional route to this. Since we already know the partial amount and the whole amount, I'm not going to bother with the proportion. You could if you wanted to, though. So if you were to set that up, the percent is what we're trying to find. So that would be like x over 100, and then that equal your part, which is 125, over your whole, which is 300. The part is your partial amount, so that's what we said here. The whole would be out of how many people total. Again, a more traditional route that people like to do with percents is we just simply do the partial over the whole. So 125 over 300 is 0.416 with the 6 repeating. That is the decimal, and then we want to make it into percent. So multiply by 100, and it comes out to 41.6 repeating percent, which we can round up to 42%. This is also accomplishing the same goal as this still, because this would be like 125 over 300, and then you'd multiply that by the 100, because I would have my part over whole, multiply by 100, and all that would equal my percent. So that's a couple different ways you can kind of think through or work through that problem. Another example here in the blue. Out of 210 cars who started the race, 191 completed the race, 12 of them gave up, and 7 were disqualified. What percent did not complete the race? So we have 191, it says, completed the race. There were 210 cars total. So you would take your total minus how many completed, and that leaves you with 19 did not complete. Now, it didn't specify as far as like why did they not complete. Was it because they gave up or disqualified? It didn't matter. It was just saying what percent did not complete the race. So that's our 19 here. So we're going to take the percentage that did not complete over our whole of 200. 19 over 210, my bad. So 19 over 210, you divide that, you get 0.0905. Multiply that by 100, and that gives us our percent of 9.05%, which we can just round simply to 9%. So roughly 9% of the cars did not complete the race. Now, we can combine percentages and use that for different ways of solving problems as well. So we have an example here, and we're going to just jump right into it. The news says tuition is expected to increase 7% next year. if the tuition is currently $1,200 per quarter, what will it be next year? So we're going to take the percentage, we're going to combine that with the information we already know and use that to get an end result. So we have our $1,200 that is the current price. Our price is going to increase by 7%. So we need to figure out, well, what is 7% of this price? 1,200 times 7%, which is 0.07, is going to be an $84 increase. Now, that is the increase. They want to know what is going to be the tuition cost. Since they want to know what the cost will be, we're going to take that increase and add it to the original price. And that's going to give us tuition being $1,284 next year. Now, this here was one method of solving this. I'm going to show you a different method, and for some people, maybe it'll make more sense, or maybe you'll like it better. So, this is going to be an alternative. So, for this alternative here, I want to focus on this part right here, because that's what this alternative really focuses on. So the price is going to increase by 7%. So what that means is that next year, our new price is 107% of the original. It's 100% of what the price was last year plus 7% more. So that's where we get 107%. So some people like this method quicker, or like this method better, because they see it as a quicker way. Because all I'm going to do then is I'm just simply going to take my original price of 1,200, and if I just multiply that by 107%, that would tell me right there, well, 107% of the price is 1,284, which is then going to be my cost for next year. So some people think that's easier. Some people that makes more sense too. And then in the past when I've taught this, some people that completely loses, it makes no sense. So whichever method makes more sense to you, or if your teacher specifies a certain way. Also, you know, if you're ever unsure, you could run it both ways and make sure you get the same answer both times. And that will kind of help maybe boost your confidence that you actually got it right. All right, and now we're going to continue this on, and we got more to this problem now. So now, tuition is expected to decrease 3% the following year. What will the cost be then? So, we just figured out that next year, our cost is $1,284. But now they're saying the year after that, then now we're going to decrease 3%. So again, I'm going to show you both ways you could approach this problem. So, we have our original price, our new original price for next year, which is $1,284. This price is expected to decrease by 3%. So we need to figure out what is 3% of that price. So 1,284 times 3%, because again, for a percent, you divide it by 100 to get the decimal. So 1,284 times 0.03 tells us that the price is going to decrease by $38.52. So we're going to take this 1,284 and we're going to subtract that. So 1,284 minus the 38.52 tells us that then our expected tuition will be $1,245.48. Now, doing it this way does have a benefit in that it does tell you how much you're either going to be increasing or decreasing by. So that is part of the process. You figure out, well, what is the amount of increase or decrease? Versus the other way, which is more of a shortcut, just gets you straight to the answer. Which, if you wanted or needed to know, you could just do your answer minus the original to figure out the increase or decrease. But this way does still kind of spit it out to you. Again, I'm going to show you the alternative. So, again, we're saying the price is going to decrease by 3%. So that means that the price the following year is going to be 97% of the current cost, because it's going down by 3. So it's going to be 97% of the previous. So what we could do is we could take our 1,284 and figure out what 97% of that is. And then that will give us right away to our $1,245.48. So that's a couple different ways you can combine percent problems, because maybe it'll have you do one step and then it'll have you do another. And again, those are two different methods. You can do the original or the alternative. Again, whichever makes more sense to you, whichever you like better, and so on. All right. Next example here in the purple. Because of losses by your employer, you agree to a temporary 10% pay cut. Your boss promises a 10% raise after 6 months. The question is, will you be back to your original salary? So, there's a couple different ways you can go with this. They didn't say what our salary is, so we can just work generally speaking here. If you wanted to pick a certain number, then you could, and you just run with it, but we're going to try to keep it simple on ourselves. They didn't tell us our salary, so we're going to just pick a number to start. And I made a note here that for percents, 100 is easy to work with. Because if I'm just saying I have $100, that's the same way as thinking 100%. And then I can work it out and figure, hey, yeah, I'm going to have more, or no, I'm going to have less. So we'll run through that. So first off, we're having a 10% cut because you agreed to that. So a 10% cut, again, you could run through this like up here. You could run through, subtract, or add, or you can just do the straight to the, full percent, like how I did for the alternative, whichever makes sense to you. A 10% cut is going to be my $100 that I'm, thinking of, times 90%, because I'm only getting 90% now. I took a 10% cut. That tells me my new pay is not going to be $90. So what that equates to is that I, in this 10% cut, am having a $10 loss. Okay? But then after 6 months, I get a 10% raise back as a promise. So now we're going to run through the 10% raise. Well, my new pay was now $90, but I'm getting a 10% raise. So I'm going to make 110% of that, because I'm making my 100% of the 90 plus 10%. Well, 90 times 1.10, though, is going to be 99 for the new pay. So, sure, I gained $9 this way, but I originally lost 10. If I originally lost 10, and now I gain 9, I'm not getting back to my original goal here. I needed to make back $10 to cover this, or in this case, percentage, and I didn't. I started at 100, and in the end, grand scheme of things, I ended at 99. Now, in this case, $1 is not going to be a huge deal, but again, since I just worked with 100 and I didn't work with the actual salary, that comes out to a 1% cut. And depending on how much your salary is, that 1% could be a bigger deal. But the point of the question was, will I be back to my original salary? I lost 10, I gained 9. So, no, the pay raise will not get you back to your original. Now, again, if you were given a specific salary, you could have ran through the same process. You would have just used a different number to start with than 100. Again, using 100 when dealing with percent problems is just a usual easy trick if you're not given a specific amount to work with. Now, if it had asked you in this problem, say you're making X amount of money, how much of it will your pay be different in the end, then you would have to use that number. But again, it's just simple. Are you back to the original or not? All right, we got one last example here. A stockbroker tells his investors the value of your stock fell 60% last year. However, this year, their value increased 75%. So now you're 15% ahead. And they want to know, is his claim true? And if you just look at it, you might think, sure, 75% minus 60%, that comes out to 15. So yeah, guy's telling the truth. But this is why it's important to know how to work with percentages. Because, sure, he's going to tell you something like that, but the math may not actually check out. So, again, they didn't give us an initial value. So, for simplicity's sake, we're going to, again, just say 100 is what we're going to start with. So, we're going to say, originally, I had $100. and I fell 60%. So if my original $100 is now worth 60% less, that means I'm losing $60. So now I only have $40. But my stockbroker made some money back. He said it gained 75% back. Great, 75%. So 40 times that 0.75 comes out to a $30 gain. But 40 plus 30, I'm only going to end with 70. He's trying to tell me that I had a 15% gain from the original. But I started with $100 and now I only got 70. His claim is not true at all because he's trying to say I'm 15% ahead. Now, again, since this was 100% and this is like 70%, that means that actually we're behind by 30%. So he flat out lied to us because they're actually 30% behind on the value of these stocks. They are not 15% ahead. They're not ahead at all. So that is an example of why it's important to know how to work with percentages, how to reason with them, because if you're not careful or if you don't know what you're doing, somebody can easily present some information to you and flat out lie to you. But if you know what you're doing, then you can, reason your way through and counter and be like, hey, no, this is actually what's happening. Or you just know, hey, this guy is maybe a little shady, so maybe I don't want to work with a stockbroker. Maybe I want to go find somebody else to deal with. So, hope that helped you.